Have you ever stopped to think about what really keeps life on Earth functioning? What would happen if, suddenly, this vital force disappeared without a trace? The answer is more frightening than any science fiction movie. The sun, this star we take for granted, is much more than just a source of light and heat. If it disappeared, Earth would plunge into unimaginable chaos, where every second would be a race against time to survive. You will discover not only the immediate impact of the sun's absence, but also the devastating long-term effects. Get ready, because what you're about to learn will challenge everything you thought you knew about our universe. And the most impressive part? There might be a small chance of survival, but it's far from guaranteed. Curious? Keep reading and dive into a scenario where science and fiction meet at a point of no return. Imagine for a moment that the sun, this constant presence in our lives, suddenly disappeared. Initially, everything would seem normal. Earth would continue its rotation, and sunlight would still reach us for about 8 minutes. This brief period would be like the last breath of a star that had always been there, but now is gone. There would be no time to prepare, only to watch as the universe, merciless, takes us into the unknown. And then, darkness. Not the darkness of night, which is calm and serene, but a deep darkness where human curiosity becomes our only companion. As soon as the last ray of sunlight fades, Earth would plunge into perpetual night. There would be no more sunrises, no more sunsets, only distant stars and artificial lights that, for a time, would continue to shine. However, this light wouldn't be enough to sustain life as we know it. Science tells us that the absence of sunlight wouldn't just affect our vision, but also the functioning of all nature. Without the sun's light, plants could no longer perform photosynthesis, and the life cycles that depend on this process would begin to unravel, like dominoes falling one after the other. With the darkness, silence would also come. The absence of the sun would impact even the sounds we're used to hearing. Without the natural warmth it provides, the wind would stop blowing, the ocean waves would cease their movement, and Earth, now a cold and silent ball, would become a strange and desolate place. Here, once again, curiosity about the universe and its silent forces arises. After all, how many of us have really stopped to think about what would happen if this celestial giant disappeared? Reflection leads us to value what we often take for granted. Even if the stars continue to shine in the sky, their cold, distant light would be a poor substitute for the sun's warmth. The consequences wouldn't stop there. Without the sun's gravitational pull, Earth would begin to drift from its orbit, wandering through space like a ship adrift. The universe, vast and indifferent, would become an even more dangerous place, with Earth vulnerable to collisions with other celestial bodies. It's as if our planet, once part of an organized system, were thrown into chaos, leaving us at the mercy of incomprehensible cosmic forces. Without the sun, the first noticeable change would be the drastic drop in temperature. Within the first 24 hours, the heat we've accumulated would begin to escape, leaving Earth rapidly colder. Imagine a day of severe winter, but multiplied by 1,000. Science shows us that without the sun's constant heat source, the planet would quickly begin to freeze. What was once a cold breeze would become a biting icy wind, transforming the environment into a hostile and inhospitable scene. Curiosity leads us to question how long Earth could endure without the vital warmth the sun offers us daily. In no time, Earth's surface would begin to freeze. The water, which covers most of our planet, would be one of the first to succumb to the intense cold. Rivers, lakes, and even oceans would start to solidify. This, in turn, would trigger a series of even more severe problems. Without liquid water, aquatic life that depends on this habitat would begin to disappear, creating a cascading effect that would impact the entire ecosystem. Here, once again, science and curiosity unite to make us realize the fragility of our planet without the sun's constant presence. As the cold intensifies, Earth would become an even darker place. Plant life, without light and heat, would quickly die, and temperatures would continue to drop alarmingly. Homes and buildings that usually protect us would become icy traps, unable to retain the necessary warmth for survival. Those with access to alternative energy sources, like generators, might hold out for a time, but not for long. Curiosity leads us to question what life would be like in those early days when every decision could mean the difference between life and death. As hours pass, Earth's temperature would drop to levels we can only imagine in the coldest poles of the planet. Regions that were once habitable would become uninhabitable, and populations that once lived in tropical areas would face conditions reminiscent of the worst apocalyptic scenarios. Without the sun to warm, what would remain would be a planet covered in ice, where only the most prepared or the luckiest could survive for a while. Once again, we are forced to confront our dependence on the sun and the fragility of our place in the universe. As the cold sets in and the sun's light is absent, ecosystems would begin to collapse frighteningly fast. Plants, which rely on photosynthesis to produce energy, would be the first to succumb. Without sunlight, there would be no photosynthesis, and without this vital process, plants would wither and die. This initial collapse would only be the beginning of a catastrophic chain of events. Science teaches us that plants are the foundation of all food chains on Earth. Without them, curiosity turns into fear as we think about the global consequences for all living beings. The death of plants would have direct consequences for herbivores, which are the primary consumers of this plant energy. Without food, these animals would quickly begin to die, affecting in turn the carnivores that depend on them. The domino effect would be devastating and unstoppable. Large animals like elephants and giraffes, which require large amounts of vegetation, would be some of the first to disappear. Human curiosity naturally leads us to question, how would we deal with the massive loss of biodiversity and the silence that would follow the extinction of so many species? With the extinction of herbivores and carnivores, life on Earth would begin to die out on a large scale. Ecosystems, complex and interconnected, would enter total collapse. Entire regions that were once rich in life would become cold and barren deserts. What would remain would be desolate landscapes with no animal life, no vegetation, just a barren, frozen Earth. At this point, even the most resilient organisms, like certain types of bacteria, would face extreme difficulties in surviving. Science tells us that life always finds a way, but in this scenario, even the most optimistic curiosity faces nearly insurmountable barriers. It's important to remember that humans, at the top of the food chain, are also vulnerable to this collapse. With the death of plants and animals, agriculture would become impossible, and fishing would no longer be a viable option. Without natural resources, societies would quickly collapse, with hunger and lack of shelter becoming immediate threats. Curiosity makes us think of alternatives, but the reality would be relentless. Our survival without the sun would be a constant struggle, and in many cases, a losing battle. Cities that were once full of life would turn into silent graveyards. After a month without the sun, Earth would transform into a true desert of ice. Temperatures would drop to such low levels that most of the planet would be covered by a thick layer of ice. Science shows us that without solar energy, Earth's surface would freeze, reaching temperatures of -30 degrees Celsius or even lower in some regions. This new reality would be relentless, with biting winds and cold so intense that survival, even in well-equipped shelters, would be an almost impossible challenge. Curiosity, once fueled by theories and hypotheses, would now confront the harsh reality of an uninhabitable world. The frozen expanse that would form over time would erase any trace of life that might still exist on the surface. Oceans, seas, and rivers would be completely frozen, transforming what was once a source of life into vast, white, silent deserts. In this frozen Earth, only a few microorganisms, possibly sheltered in geothermal depths, could continue to exist, feeding our curiosity about life's ability to adapt to extreme conditions. But for humans, the chances of survival would be minimal. The struggle for survival would take place in small underground refuges or near natural heat sources, but hope would become an increasingly rare commodity. The great cities, once vibrant centers of human activity, would turn into frozen ruins. Buildings and entire structures would be enveloped in ice, their foundations cracked by the intense cold. The civilizations we built over millennia would become little more than ghosts of a distant past. Science and technology, which for so long were our allies, would now be insufficient to combat the vastness of the cold. And as we observe these frozen landscapes, we cannot help but reflect on how we got here, and on the cosmic forces that, in one way or another, have have always controlled our destiny. In this new scenario, Earth itself would begin to change. Without the sun, the atmosphere would freeze, and the planet could become a dead celestial body, floating aimlessly through the universe. Without an energy source, Earth would lose any chance of regeneration or natural warming. It would become a desolate planet with an uncertain fate, drifting through the cosmos. And as the cold takes over, curiosity about what could have been if the sun were still here would turn into inevitable sadness. Earth, which was once a vibrant home, would now be an inhospitable and frozen world. Thus, as we contemplate this scenario, we are led to wonder about the paths Earth could take in this frozen state. Would the planet continue its journey through space, colliding with other celestial bodies, or be drawn into some unknown gravitational force, leading it to an even darker fate? The possibilities are as vast as the universe itself, and it is this uncertainty that keeps our curiosity alive, even in the face of the inevitable. As Earth became a frozen, wandering planet in the universe, questions would arise about what would happen in the long term. Without the sun's gravity to keep Earth in its stable orbit, our planet would become a drifting vessel, floating in the vast and indifferent cosmos. Science suggests that without a star to orbit, Earth could be drawn toward other celestial bodies, or, worse yet, collide with some space object in its trajectory. Imagine our world, once vibrant and full of life, now adrift aimlessly, a mere ice stone in the infinite. Curiosity about Earth's fate makes us contemplate the vast possibilities the universe holds. Without the influence of the sun, there would be no more seasonal cycles, no days and nights, or even the concept of time as we know it. The concept of a calendar, so ingrained in our understanding of time, would become obsolete. Earth, now just a frozen sphere, would continue its journey through space, with no defined course, perhaps even colliding with another planet or being pulled into a black hole. Each scenario is more fascinating and terrifying than the last. Science and astrology, which once guided us with predictions and star maps, now only watch, powerless, as Earth follows its uncertain course. Another intriguing possibility would be Earth's encounter with another star system. Imagine for a moment our planet being captured by the gravity of a new star. Would it be a second chance for life? Or would the planet be so devastated that the arrival of a new heat source would make no difference? Curiosity about what might happen in such an encounter is irresistible. Would we be able to rebuild what was lost, or would Earth become just another celestial body orbiting an unknown star, never to harbor life again? Science, no matter how advanced, still leaves us with more questions than answers. And then there's the most extreme scenario of all: Earth, devoid of any star, continuing to float eternally in space. Without a source of heat or energy, the planet would be a dead world, carrying with it the memories of a time when it was home to countless forms of life. Wandering through the universe, Earth might even cross paths with other solar systems, but its inability to warm and regenerate would prevent it from becoming habitable again. Curiosity, which has always driven us to explore and discover, now leads us to a dead end, where the answers are lost in the cold emptiness of space. After imagining a world where the sun disappears, it becomes clear that our existence is extremely fragile and dependent on this star. Earth, which for billions of years has sustained life in all its forms, would become a place of desolation without the heat and light of the sun. But what really matters here is not just understanding what would happen, but what we do with this knowledge. Are you prepared to value life, nature, and the wonders of the universe around us more? Are we ready to rethink our priorities before it's too late? What would you do if you knew time was running out? Don't let curiosity end here. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to keep exploring these fascinating mysteries of the universe and learn how we can prepare for the challenges ahead.